You may have noticed the giant fiddle leaf fig behind me, and yes, it needs to be pruned. It hasn't been pruned since I had it, and it was about this tall. The plant itself is around 7 years old, and it is officially time to give this bad boy a clip. The question becomes, how do you prune something properly? And is there a wrong way to prune which could actually cause poor growth or no growth at all? The answer is yes, there is a wrong way to prune your plants. So today's video, we're gonna look at how to properly prune your plants for growth and what you could do in the event you wanted to stunt growth or stop it entirely to an extent, how you would go about doing so. So there's two types of pruning, if you will. The first one being heading and the second one being thinning. So thinning is essentially the removal of entire stems, in particular stems you don't want to grow back because of spatially where that plant is or for light capture of lower branches. And so thinning, you would cut right at the main stem branch interface. So right on that node is where you would cut that off if you choose to thin and you didn't want to invigorate or create more growth. Another way to thin that isn't as extreme as stunting growth would be just to remove leaves strategically that may be shading out or damaged or diseased. So this would be another form of thinning that is not going to cause rapid growth or subsequently invigorate the plant to grow quicker, but it will help the plant in the future in some way, either spatially with disease, etc. and so forth. The second way to prune is what we call heading. So heading is where we propagate in general terms. So it's when we remove portions of the branch along its stem, typically at the head, and you will propagate from that, classically speaking. And heading can be used again to cause that horizontal growth along with just the height, controlling the height, maybe causing more of a bushing effect rather than a single tall tree, that sort of thing. So you can see why you would want to head in some cases. And when we do this, we tend to get really explosive, vigorous growth. The reason for that is because inside the heads of all your plants, the apical meristem of your plant on the end is where auxin is produced, and that's just a hormone. That hormone is kind of trickled down through the plant, and that suppresses side shoot growth. Now, to get rid of auxin, you just cut the dragon off at the source, and so by removing that apical meristem or that leading edge of the plant, the auxin production is dissipated, it disappears, and that gives those lateral branches time to come out and do their thing. So that is one way to get side shooting and one way to invigorate growth in some way, because once we typically cut off that head, we do still see a lot of rapid growth. So if your house plants, trees to vining plants just kind of look a little bit bleh, that is actually what you want to give a shot, is the heading process, because that will reboot the system and get things going again for you. Now, fall, winter is not the best time to prune plants, with some exceptions. The exceptions being larger indoor plants, such as the fiddle leaf or the rubber tree. Something that emits a lot of sap and is larger in size is best pruned in winter, particularly in the evening, so it's a little less messy. These guys can produce quite a bit of sap or juice, which can make a little bit of a mess. So to reduce the volume of this, wintertime, fall, along with evening is the best time to get this done. If we're talking outdoor plants, you would want to do that actually right now in the fall, because it's going into a dormancy period, and that is one of the best times to prune. If you want to counteract the ultimately slow growth that you find in the fall and winter, which will subsequently make propagation a little bit more difficult if you choose to go propagation route, with your pruning, you can actually add additional light. Now, light, such as what I have behind me, 12 hours on, 12 hours off, will allow for proper growth. You can go up to 18 hours total light, and you will also see really good growth in that case as well. If you don't know how many hours of light you are getting ambiently, then what I suggest doing is getting a plant sensor. For example, the Earth One plant sensor that I helped to design, that can tell you how many hours you're getting, but more importantly, how many good hours of light you're getting, because that is important. Yes, you can get light, but on a day like today, which is very cloudy, is that quality light enough light to result in growth? And the app, if it's a good one, will tell you that. So that is something to keep in mind there. If you aren't sure if your light is set at the right height, this can also affect, again, the quality of light. So you want to make sure it's the proper distance from the canopy to avoid burn, as well as you want it close enough so that you don't end up with leggy or poor growth, which can also happen. But that's the way we would counteract a plant that's going into dormancy due to low light levels or reduced hours of light. So there are three kind of main reasons why you may choose to prune or thin out a plant. Number one is being it is just way too big for the space, such as this guy. He's hitting the roof, kind of curving sideways. He most definitely needs to be clipped. Number two would be to cause more aggressive growth and bilateral growth, so branching out. And you don't have to prune to achieve this. I'm going to do a separate video on how to get side shoots on a plant that doesn't involve any mechanical manipulation of the plant. But that is another way to get different types of growth, again, bilateral, so something that's horizontal coming out the sides, that sort of thing. And the reason why we get such explosive growth after pruning is because we have a giant root ball below the soil surface that's meant to support the upper biomass, stem, leaves, etc., of the original volume. And now you've just shrunk that volume down. So now those roots are capturing the same amount of nutrients, the same amount of water, and they're able to use it or utilize it to put on new biomass, and it tends to happen very, very quickly because now you have a plant that doesn't have old, tired leaves. You also have a plant that has a lot of new, fresh growth. It doesn't, covered in dust if it's in a house. You've removed all those leaves, so it's more effective at photosynthesis and ultimately putting on new biomass. So that would make sense. And number three is actually thinning. So the process of thinning is the same as pruning, but when we remove a lot of junk on the plant, you will get more photosynthetic capture. So if you see the light kind of hitting the plant and you're noticing some leaves are shaded or lower branches are shaded by the uppers, then those bottom leaves, while they still can photosynthesize, they're not as effective. And so they're kind of a cost, a tag along on that plant. So removing branches or leaves strategically that allow light to reach the canopy wholly, this will again help with really good growth. And this may just look like plucking a couple leaves off rather than cutting an entire branch. And that's where kind of pruning to thinning is a little bit different, but can be done in the same breath. So I want to show you the fiddle leaf fig I have behind me and how I'm going to trim up such a giant plant as this. The first thing is, who knew that this tripod could go 10 feet in the air? The second thing is, I haven't done this ever on this poor tree. Okay, here we go. Time to chop. So this is what we call heading, aka prune cut, aka should cause vigorous growth both bilaterally and give this guy a poor break because he's officially hitting the roof. So I'm gonna cut here. That is so sad. That's okay, we officially have a baby plant now, so we'll deal with that accordingly. So of course with these guys, ideal world, I would be using something much shorter or sharper, something like shears or whatever the case is. I'm using literally a steak knife, not ideal. but I'm not too worried about it. Disease is pretty rare, particularly when you have this much juice that comes out of this, or sap that comes out of these trees. They stay pretty hardy, but if you really want to take precaution, use some shears. And then of course, because I'm taking the apical meristem, the leading edge of that plant, I'm going to pop it in water and these will propagate really nicely. So that definitely is something else to think about. But if you guys did enjoy this video, thumbs up, comment down below if you've ever had a plant this large that you just really don't want to cut, but you have, and hit that subscribe button. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.